The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Between science and ignorance, there is filler.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Filler. The original broadcast date is, of course, August 28th, 2016. I want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. I have on the air, on the line, Zach Smith and Perry Johnson. They are the stars, creators, and brains behind the web series Afterlife Sessions. And of course, I brought them in for my Paranormal Farrar month. Next September 10th, I'll be going to the Farrar Schoolhouse in Maxwell, Iowa. And they've been there a couple of 3 times, so they're going to be able to tell me about their experiences there. We're going to find out a lot about the web series, what got them into the paranormal, etc., etc., etc. But if you're wanting information on Paranormal Farrar, go to paranormalfiller.com. Just click the Farrar link, and you will be good to go. Also, quick reminder, October 15th, I'll be in Valley's Mines, Missouri. That's for the Paranormal Valley's Mines event. And but in between that, the Scarefest. If you're missing the Scarefest and you're on the Eastern Seaboard, you're not paying attention. They just announced Jason Hawes is the featured paranormal guest for this year. And Jason doesn't do a lot of these type of the Paracons. He does a lot of doesn't do a lot of anything because he doesn't need the money. Anyway, so but he is coming in. We're looking forward to the Scarefest. Of course, me and the entire Scarefest radio crew will be there for your autograph pleasure. Yeah, like you're coming to Scarefest just to get our autograph. But we will be there. We'll be doing photo ops. We'll be we've got a Scarefest radio seminar. My friend Cody, Chris Sutton, is doing a lecture on shamanism and little thing. They haven't officially put me on the schedule yet, but I will be actually doing a seminar on podcasting. So how's that for generic horror convention stuff? I just thought I'd take it a whole nother direction.
Paranormal Filler.
Zach and Perry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Wes.
Now, once again, everybody, Afterlife Sessions. It's a web series. You can basically, I rather than point you all over the place, I'm just going to say, finally, somebody with a good web address, afterlifesessions.com. So, so easy to remember, easy to spell, afterlifesessions.com. There you can find the web series. You can find links to all their social media, etc., etc. Now, let's go ahead and get into it here with, before we get into what was the impetus on the web series, I want to hear what brought about each of yours passion in the paranormal. Because by choosing this genre, I'm assuming you didn't think that this was the best way to break into television. There's got to be better ways than to do a paranormal web series. So, Perry, start with you, and then Zach, as soon as he's done, that's the first thing I want to hear from you, is individually what got you interested in the paranormal?
Well, I think definitely for me, it came when I was about 11 or 12, when I first had my first experience. And at the time, I had no idea really what it even was. It happened in my cousin's house. They lived in the middle of nowhere, and in this little farmhouse. And it was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and we were sitting in my cousin's room, and we heard this voice, and we were trying to figure out where it came from, what it was. And so we had the TV on, we turned it off, and we started putting our ears to the walls, to the ceiling, everywhere, trying to figure out where this voice is coming from. And I went downstairs, and everybody was asleep. We go back upstairs, and he has this crawl space, and it's a hole that has a little door in it, and it's covered by plastic. It's about 2 foot by 2 foot wide. It goes to an attic, and I put my ear up to it, and right behind it, it sounded like a person was just standing right behind it, just speaking, and I couldn't make out what it was saying. It was just mumbling over and over and over, and it got louder, and I got louder. And we just, being 12 years old, we freaked out and just left. We were like, we got to get out of here, And funny thing, everybody laughs because it's like, oh, yeah, well, we went back up there, of course. And the next day, we got a bunch of people, my brother, a few other family members, and we ended up going back there, and we found all these old pictures and news clippings and things like that were from someone who had left them there. And we just thought that was really weird, really interesting. But to have that experience, and I later found out that what sounded like a man was speaking was actually Latin. And I hadn't had another experience until a few years later at a cemetery. My brother and I, our little initiation, when we had people, new friends in our friend group, we would take them to the cemetery and scare them. And we were out there one night, and these glowing red eyes started following us, started darting back and forth, not really in a normal pattern, just real fast back and forth, and you could even hear the crunching of it walking, whatever it was. And it wasn't an animal, there was nothing there, it was just these floating red eyes just following us. And and then it just disappeared. I never had another experience in my life until I started paranormal investigating, actually going to, quote, haunted locations. But that's really what kind of compelled me. I really didn't have any interest in it until Zach and I started developing our web series and actually going about being paranormal investigators. But for me, it was, I had a few experiences early on in my life, and I took those and kind of were like, I had these experiences, I wanted to find out more, and it really wasn't until I became a paranormal investigator and really dove in and learned all about paranormal investigating and, different types of entities and all of that, everything that you can learn, it really didn't pique my interest until I started learning that.
And for me, was an experience when I was 3 years old. It was 1989, and we moved to this little town called Geneseo, Illinois. It's about a population of 6,500 people, a lot of Victorian homes, Underground Railroad. And we move into this beautiful 3-story Queen Anne Victorian-style home. And I don't remember the specific day, but it was within the first 20 days that we stayed there. And as the movers are loading in their belongings, I see this little boy, so I just figured, hey, I'm going to hang out with him. He's my age. Everyone's busy. My parents don't want to be around me right now, so I'm just going to hang out with this little boy. So we go outside, we come back in, we go to the 3rd floor, we go down the stairs, and he disappears for a second, and I see him in the parlor on the 1st floor. I go up to him, and I sit down on the little love seat, and we just hold a conversation. When you're a little kid, you don't really have a grasp on time or anything of that matter. And just a few months ago, my father told me that my mother and him were around the corner eavesdropping on what I was saying, and they said at 3 years old, I was holding an intelligent conversation with this little boy. So my dad finally had enough of it, and he comes up behind me and says, Zachary, who are you talking to? And I said, my friend Tommy. And he says, oh, yeah, where is he? And I looked to my right, and I said, well, he was just right here. Where did he go? That little story, that little piece of who I am is why I do what I do.
Everybody has a better story than me. I should be doing a podcast on farming. I should just get out of the paranormal. Now, so how much? Barry kind of alluded to it. How much field work, for lack of a better word, how long were you both involved actively in paranormal research before you got together and said, hey, let's film ourselves going around the country to haunted locations?
We actually had zero experience. I grew up in a haunted house. It's a house that I still live in, and every day, every month, every year, there was something new, whether it was positive or negative, and whether I was at someone's house or a girlfriend at the time, like, it was always paranormal infested. And I don't know if it's something that followed me or if it was just my calling since the age of 3. But I think it was my experience and my persistence that brought Perry and I together in this realm. I was in a lot of bands, and Perry was my drum and keyboard tech, so we had that friendship, and we were friends since high school. But 6 years after we graduated, that's when we both moved back to Illinois, and I had this crazy idea all from a Facebook post, and he was the first one to message me, and it's been go ever since.
Yeah, we once we decided this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to be paranormal investigators. We wanted to build this web series and possibly turn it into something a lot larger down the road. We started researching, and that's kind of right where it started. That day that we decided, yes, this is what we want to do, we started researching. And I mean, we've researched, and we're still researching. I mean, 4 years now later, we're still researching. We're still trying to become the best possible paranormal investigators that we personally can be for ourselves and for everyone else out there.
I really now, and this now I'm going to preface. This is actually a compliment, although it's the first part of the sentence sounds like I'm saying something smartass to you. But looking at, I'm surprised by that answer, because your website, you come across as people that have been out there a while. I don't see any outlandish claims on your website. I don't see any high and lofty goals. A lot of teams put really high and lofty goals that they're never going to attain. I want you all to tell me your mission statement. I want you to tell the listeners that.
The real simple concept, and it's straight to the point, is as paranormal investigators and complete believers in the afterlife, it's turn skeptics into believers. And the only way that we can convey that message and that mission is by using compassion, loyalty, respect, and patience. We don't provoke, we don't disrespect the dead, and we always make time for our fans. And with that being said, people open up to us and allow us into their world. And when you base that friendship and you allow someone to get close to you, it's very persuasive with your evidence. They enjoy that sense of originality and the genuine aspect that we maintain. We try to be very professional with everything that we do.
Now I agree that's a good way to do the web series, but nothing you just said that I've met a lot of skeptics, and I'm not one of them, incidentally, but I've met a lot of true skeptics. Now, I'm not talking cynics. You'll never convince a cynic of anything. But even on the skeptics, what you just described there is a more of a means to get where you want to be, to to convince them. But I'm not even, I'm not even sure at this point. I don't know what it will take. Because now video and audio evidence, with what you can do nowadays, that's another question I have for you. You're obviously talented people. I only watched the one episode, so I'm assuming it's not your best one. Nothing I ever did was the best I ever did. But what I'm saying is, it was well edited. It was imaginatively put together. I actually liked a couple of the things that you did in it, as far as the way you presented some stuff.
Thank you.
But seeing how talented you are, it still kind of shocks me that this was the venue to jump in with both feet like that. Now, I jumped in with both feet as a paranormal researcher. I went out, I bought all the equipment, started doing the reading up on it and everything. But I feel like okay, here it is. I feel like my growth in the paranormal field was more organic. It is saying that you just went out and started filming yourself going around haunted houses just sounds to me like that's what I believe in the language field that's called immersion. But I do appreciate that you and like I said, your website reflects that you are actually trying to learn and trying to share. Although I got to correct one thing on your website. Yeah. On the terminology page, everything on it looks fine except the very first one for anomaly. And you said something that can't be explained by currently accepted scientific theories. The problem with that word is anomaly actually means anything that you can't explain right offhand, and people use that as a crutch now. I know. Yeah, that's cool. But so in other words, unfortunately for the paranormal field, the word anomaly, the definition is so much wider. But I'll segue from that into, I noticed that you all apparently have very little tolerance for orbs.
Yeah, unless it's on camera. Not so much on like a typical photograph, like a still. If it's something that manifests on screen, and it's not a bug, it's very compelling to us because on a lot of our episodes we do, promote those orbs. It's more so on still photography because a flash on a camera can be very disruptive.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm just going to tell you, so can infrared light. I know in the episode I watched, you all actually point out that some of the weird things that infrared light will do. And I'll put it this way: if I can point my TV remote behind me and change the TV channels, infrared light does some funky things. And unfortunately for all of us, one of those things is reflecting very good off of gnats and mosquitoes. And so it's one of those things. And I have been on investigations, and this is a confession to my listeners. I've been sitting watching DVRs, live DVR, real time, watching it, and watching the orbs and going, my God, can this place really be this dusty? And I'm thinking, and I'm in there. I'm saying, there has to be something going on. There has to be. But at the end of the day, I have to back up and say, no, Wesley, ignore the orbs, ignore all that stuff, because it's not going to convince people.
Sure.
Yeah,
so
definitely, yeah.
But I went, you had the terminology page. Okay, now here's something I wanted to get to. I don't know if it's something you didn't finish or if it's something you were working on, but okay, on your Ghost Hunting 101, right at the beginning, you had it says 2 questions, but I don't see any damn answers, so I'm going to ask you now. Paranormal Society versus crew.
Yeah, it's just, we all know that they're independent paranormal researchers. I've had a lot of people ask, how can I get into a web series? I said, well, you don't always have to take it to the degree of a web series. If you want to save money and go learn and investigate, go join a paranormal society in your local area. That's a really good starting point that gets you in the field right away.
Okay, now I understand where you're going with it.
Yeah, like the two question thing is just kind of like the main question, and then it's the contrast of the two.
Now, personally, I recommend everybody try to hook up with a reputable team.
Sure.
And I started out as an independent, and then I tried to form. I tried to do everybody else has so much luck gathering together their buddies than I did, but then I became part of an established group, and that finally my problem. Okay, probably something we have fairly in common, because one of the things you point out is get the equipment you need, and I was an equipment junkie, and so this group loved that Wesley had a carload of equipment, and the investigations became the Wesley show, and it really made me kind of no, that's not why I wanted to be a part of a group. I didn't want to spend all my time teaching everyone. That's what this show's for. But yeah, I definitely I'm glad you all are having a good experience with it. I have seen it done wrong so many times that I would never tell anybody just go out there and start filming yourselves stomping around haunted buildings.
Yes.
Now, the other question is hobbyist versus professional.
I think that the hobbyist would be what you mentioned on people just marching into a haunted location trying to get spooked.
Yeah.
Professional would be to the degree that you do it and to the degree that we do it, where we keep our head on our shoulders and we debunk before we prove, evidence, and
taking the time to do research, things like that. Yeah.
Just taking a lot of pride in your product and using compassion and solid ground instead of provocation.
Now, when you all the first, let's get into the web series.
Sure.
How do you all find the places you go? Now, I didn't go through the web series to see where all you've been, but what are your determining factors to decide where you're going to go to film yourselves?
As fun as it would be to go film at places that aren't reportedly haunted, it is our goal, since we take so much time to make these episodes, that we try to go to notoriously haunted locations. We enjoy the history aspect as much as we enjoy the paranormal side of things. So to have a backstory with the evidence and to tie it all in, that makes it really magical versus going to a place that we don't know if it's haunted and trying to build a story on that. That would be for the times that we don't film Afterlife sessions and we do a casual house call or a one-off investigation.
Yeah, public event or some sort.
Yeah, public event. That's something that we do too, where we can teach a lot of people.
Yeah. I think a lot of it just goes into just kind of researching online and knowing what places out there are. We always keep a new updated list of places that are, those notorious haunted places or historically known even. For us, like Zach said, we really enjoy history and we really like to incorporate history into our investigations. It really creates a good story to tell along with the paranormal.
And with that, too, we get a lot of people to interview that have a very compelling story to tell. And when it ties into the evidence, it's just mind-blowing.
Now, one of the things on here on your advice, everybody, this is on their Ghost Hunting 101. Now, this is actually something I've never thought of telling people, at least this succinctly. I try to talk them out of it. The embrace disappointment.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you're not always going to get evidence.
Yeah.
There have been many occasions to where we filmed at a place called the Edinburgh Manor, and we went there, I don't know how many years ago, like 2 or 3, and at the end of the night, we were just so defeated, and we did all of our interviews, our pre-production. I had the history ready to go for narration and whatever. And I look at Perry, and this is back when we weren't really, as experienced as we are now. We're still learning, but we were more so chasing the spirits. And I had a friend of mine tell me, sometimes just slow the pace and let them come to you. Mm-hmm. And that was the big deciding factor. But I looked at him and I was disappointed, and I said, Perry, I feel like this place is, literally dead, and we may have wasted time and money.
Yeah. And
he said something along the lines of, just go home, upload the footage, and just observe.
Yep.
And so much happened, and we didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's why it's so important. So when I say embrace the disappointment, it just means lower your expectations. Go in there not expecting to ghost hunt. Go in there to expect to paranormal investigate.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people go into places and they expect, like we were talking about the hobbyists, the people go into places expecting to get scared or expecting these just crazy things to happen. And when those things don't happen, they can be discouraged very quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it even said they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not doing this right. Or, well, not necessarily. I strongly believe that the paranormal, they choose who they want to interact with.
Oh yeah, and on that line, now one thing you said, I'm giving you a lot of compliments here. You all had one of the most intelligent conversations about residual hauntings on your Ferrara episode that I've heard anybody in the paranormal have. Now, I will preface that by saying that that's because I think 99% of the people out stomping around in dark buildings are wrong about residual hauntings.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And do you remember what you said, what you were talking about on that episode?
If you could please remind me, that would be great.
Yeah. Basically, you were talking about if you encounter something. Okay, you brought up about residual hauntings and how it's, people report seeing the same thing going on often the same time every day, or the ghost, as it were, doing the same thing over and over and over. And Barry, I believe it was you brought up, what happens if you interrupt them?
Yeah, oh yeah, right.
And I love that because that is my thesis on residual hauntings. I think that you are right on the money that a residual haunt is when the ghost tunes us out. They're just going about their business for whatever reason. They're attached to it. Something they're trying to relive some important moment, or they're trying to get back to their old routine. That's another way to look at it. Mm-hmm. And you brought up about, but see the textbook, pardon the expression, definition of residual haunt is it's just a recording in time. It plays over and over. It doesn't matter if you're there. And so many of the reports that I hear are just what you described. Finally, somebody gets their attention, and at that point, that means it's not a recorded event anymore.
Right.
That means there is an intelligence behind it.
Yeah, it's pretty magical. We truly experienced residual energy at the Roth home. It was America's first documented demonic case, and demonic possession case, excuse me. And we were on the second floor in the bedroom, and from our angle we could see the staircase, and we were in there for probably 45 minutes.
Yes.
And every 15 minutes on the dot we saw the shadow figure go up and down the stairs. And we didn't want to break that cycle because it was doing its thing.
Yeah.
But that's the first-hand experience that I can actually testify on.
See, now my mindset is different. If I encountered that, the first thing I would want to do is mess with the ghost.
Yeah,
sure,
right.
Yeah. And we saw it, and we aimed our camera out there, but we couldn't pick up anything. But we clearly saw it, all three of us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was surreal, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But it was like every 15 minutes on the dot. Like that blows my mind.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah,
because they say there's no space or time in the afterlife. I'm starting to disagree. I think there's space galore, but I think there's time.
Yeah.
I've always been fuzzy on that. I do believe they experience time. I don't think they experience it the same way we do. In other words, a linear fashion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in other words, now here we go. Let's really throw it out there. To that ghost, that 15 minutes, that might have been the same 15 minutes over and over, and not in a Groundhog Day sort of way. Just so in other words, 15. But I'm sure to that ghost, I'm not sure, but I would presume to that ghost, whatever he was doing in that 15 minutes took him 15 minutes from beginning to end. He just has the luxury of starting over at the same 15-minute mark. So,
right.
But yeah, I don't like they don't experience. I really think that they do experience time. We just don't understand how they experience it. But that's But that we're a long way from proving that. We're still at the point of actually trying to figure out what it is we're even trying to measure with our consumer grade electronics as we stomp around the field. But I wanted to get that compliment in there for you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to. Now I think it was Zach. Now I'm going to bust your chops on something. During your EVP session, or one of the EVP sessions, it was a Spirit Box session. You heard a voice, and Zach, you said you sound like an older female.
Yes.
It is a wonder you did not get your ass kicked if there was a ghost handy. No matter who that is, unless it happened to be a child, everyone else in the spectrum of life and death would want to kick your ass for saying the words, "You sound like an older female."
That's hilarious. I'm sorry. Well, you don't really think about stuff sometimes.
Well, I'm just saying that's something you should think. I mean, okay, let's put it in paranormal investigator terms. Let's say it was an older female. Mm-hmm. You just pissed her off. She's not going to talk to you anymore.
Of course. I called her old.
Exactly.
You sound like a youthful beauty.
I think you could have said, "I think I heard a woman," and ended that sentence there.
Hopefully, I advanced my investigative skills since then.
But that is some things you were talking about. When I do an EVP session, first of all, everybody seems to have this script in their head of the things, and I don't mean the same for every location, but when they go into a location, they want to they go through this line of questioning based on who they think is there, and some of the things I'd like to see more people do more of is try to use your psychic senses, if you will, and ask the first thing that pops into your head, even if it sounds really, really stupid, as long as it's not, when did you die, where are you from, that kind of stuff. But but just try to get them involved. And now something you did bring up, when you're having a quiet night and you just can't, like you said, you were chasing the ghost. A lot of groups are starting to have we're having a lot of luck with if you have to do it, rehearse a conversation, but have a conversation with the digital recorders going, and ignore the ghost, ignore the location. Let them join your conversation and see what happens.
And sometimes when we lose our like professionalism cap, if you will, we just try to be amicable and talk within ourselves, and it really lightens the mood and brings out activity.
And that's how it's worked. We've done that exact thing. Where we just kind of start to talk amongst ourselves, have a conversation with each other, maybe lighten the mood, maybe joke around a little, and there's been times where almost immediately we start to interact all of a sudden with, these, whatever's there,
And it seems like sometimes you can actually document them talking to one another.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Now, before we go to commercial break, the web series, how do you see it evolving? What are your plans? What do you hope for this?
The hope is just to really inspire others and document really good evidence and get my fix of teaching history and satisfying that hunger for documenting the evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone dreams of, having a TV network show, and if that happens, it happens, but that's not why we do this. It would be nice to travel more and experience more outside of our 6-hour radius.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we do this because we truly love it, and we felt called upon to do it. And we're just, at this point now, we've had such amazing support on YouTube, and people enjoy watching us, and they learn something, and they're inspired to do it themselves. And as a teacher, that's how I kind of look at myself sometimes. There's nothing sweeter in the world than inspiring someone to do what I do.
Yeah, if we can inspire and teach, other people and get other people involved in the paranormal community, that's, we couldn't ask for anything more.
Okay, now we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor. We'll be back. All right, I should learn to talk if I'm going to do radio. We're going to be right back with more Paranormal Filler.
Hello, friends. Are you exhausted with life? Resent your children? Maybe your husband is cheating on you. Get yourself a tarot reading with Ken Boggle. He can provide you with the clarity, guidance, and answers you need. That's tarotbyken.com. He makes things seem less shitty.
And welcome back to more Paranormal Filler. We're talking to the boys from Afterlife Sessions, a web series available on the internets. Zach Smith and Perry Johnson. Now let's get. By the way, on the last question, I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret of the paranormal. Everybody wants to be on TV.
Sure.
They, a lot of them will say they don't, but yes,
it would be nice. I mean, it's something that we do think about, and we've tried pursuing, and we've been sought out by producers, and we've been pitched and stuff before, and that's a very good feeling because it makes us feel like we're doing something right. But at the end of the day, you can't. It's just like investigating it. Embrace the disappointment. So we don't really try to do it.
Yeah.
You said it earlier. The thing about it is, once this becomes your passion, whether you grow up with it like you do or obtain it later in life like I did, and anywhere in between, for whatever your passion, I don't care what your passion. If your passion is model cars, if you can find an avenue where you can pursue your passion and quit the day job,
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to turn that down. So,
right, exactly.
Now you might turn down a bad project, admittedly, but yeah, that's so nothing wrong with that.
We'll just let it come to us if it's meant to be.
Now how many times have you been to Farrar Schoolhouse?
5 times.
Yeah, about 5 times. Yep.
5 times. So it's more than I even realized.
Well, we've filmed there twice, but we've done 3 public events there.
Yep.
Okay. Now this is something. Now help me with the layout of the place. This is something I should ask the last guest I had. Never having been there, are there 3 or 4 individual levels of the building?
Let's see.
There's right when you walk in, you walk actually to the 2nd floor because the 1st floor is the gymnasium and boiler room, and there's some bathrooms. So you actually walk into the school, and there's a big staircase that leads to the 3rd floor. And so the 2nd floor is, I believe, kitchen and things like that.
It depends if you count the gymnasium as a floor.
Yeah.
If that's a basement, there's only 3 floors.
Yeah, otherwise there's 4.
Okay, well that's what I thought. Looking at the maps, it looks to me like what I would call the ground level floor. Of course, you've got the basement, and my wife said, "Why would they put a gymnasium in the basement?" I said, "It's cheaper to build the floor that way."
It was a fallout shelter too back in the day.
Yeah, yep.
Well, back in the day, everything was. If it was below ground, it was.
And I think that's what they intended it to be on, so that they made it also their gymnasium. So yeah. It's just a fallout shelter.
Because I think that's where they had lunch and all that stuff too.
Yep.
Now, of course, back in the 70s, they just told us that we could hide under our desk.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when the nuclear holocaust comes, that $50 desk was going to save my ass.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but looking at the maps, you have what I would call the basement area or gymnasium. Then, there's a first floor that doesn't have much on it. It really seems like it's just kind of an offset of the gymnasium.
It's like where the school office was at the time, and it's just a pathway to upstairs or downstairs.
I believe there's a kitchen on that floor as well.
There's a kitchen.
Okay, so a couple of rooms, but nothing major. Then you've got two more full levels. Of the three main levels now, talking auditorium and the two upper floors.
Yes.
Personally, what has been your favorite as far as experience and evidence? And if those don't coincide, let me know.
Well, as for the whole building, the boiler room is by far the most haunted in my opinion.
Yeah.
But for the third and fourth floor, the principal's office on the very top floor is probably the most haunted.
Most active as well, I would say. It kind of is a tie between the boiler room and the fourth floor, I guess, what you would call it, which is where the principal's office is. It's kind of a tie. A
lot of shadow movement, and we've had banging sounds. And even when I was doing B-roll the first time I was there, there's this little side office next to the principal's room, and I heard a knocking sound right through the glass. And right then I knew that I wasn't alone.
Yeah. Definitely the boiler room has a bit of a dark energy. Almost every person who's ever walked in there and spent any amount of time has come out saying, wow, that's definitely, and I wouldn't say so as negative, but definitely dark.
Yeah, it's not positive by any means, or it's just manipulative.
Yeah, that's true too.
Now, do you know if the I'll call it the legend of the janitor? Boy, that sounds that's a name for a sci-fi channel movie. I am going to the legend of the janitor. No, you all alluded to it on the episode where apparently now your understanding was that during the same time period that the Dick principal was involved, that there was also a penis-related janitor. Now, do you know the research behind that character?
There is no documentation, but from what Jim and Nancy Oliver and other people that have dedicated their life to this school, they've said that it's through former students
and workers.
And they just kind of validated that there was physical and sexual manipulation in the principal's room, in that little side office that I mentioned, and then down there in the boiler room.
See, I don't mind oral histories like that when I go into a building. I realize some of it gets garbled up, but the reason I asked that was nobody else has talked about the boiler room. Everybody else talks about the principal's office.
Yeah, the boiler room is its own entity, if you will. If it's okay with you, I would just like to share a little story about the boiler room. The first time we ever went there, we were with Cheryl Ann Fletcher. You interviewed her recently. And she joined us that evening, and we were about to walk into the boiler room. There's like this door that leads you there. It's right off of the gym there. And I was just marching in, and it was like my second investigation ever. I was ready to do this. And she said, stop. And you could hear crickets outside. And a little pebble was thrown at our shoe. and I could hear it bounce off, and I saved it. I still have that pebble to this day. So we march in, and we go through the little tunnel, and we end up in the boiler room, and there's like 5 of us standing there, and everyone notices this giant black mass just circling us.
Yeah.
Taller than me. I'm 6'3". It was probably 9 foot tall. And I eventually turned my back to it because, I'm new to this. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what to do. So I stand next to Cheryl, and she says to me, something just touched my arm. And being fairly new to this, I was like, really? And I was like, are you okay? She's like, shh. And I felt some charge go through my back. And as I'm standing down there, the first thing I relied on was Christ. I'm a Christian. I follow the Lord. And I just start praying. And the second that I say Jesus, my heart just starts racing and beating through my chest. And the only thing that I remember was just walking past Cheryl, and our friend JD touched my back, and I just remember the warmth.
Yeah.
And that comfort eventually calmed me down.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty intense. It was a time that I was not going through a good time mentally, and I was very susceptible.
Yeah, that moment still sticks out in my mind as probably one of the most intense situations we've ever been in. I remember there was probably 6 of us in that room.
5 or 6, I don't remember.
And we all were in a little huddle, and because this entity, this big shadow-like figure of a man, just I would say 7-8 feet tall, just unhuman-like stature, was just, and it just circled us. And I remember I was in front of everyone, and I just, it was pitch black in there. And for this thing to be pitch black, it was already, you could barely see your hand in front of your face, and to actually be able to make out.
It was so dark that you could see it in the dark.
Yeah. And watching this figure just circle us, and it just stared us down the whole time, and then just walked out. And that's all it did. But as soon as we walked out, or it walked out of the room, the whole air in that room just lifted. Like it just the heaviness went away, and it felt like you could breathe again.
Yeah.
That was definitely, that moment still stays with me.
In the last 2 public events that we've done there, we've unfortunately had 2 ladies leave in tears.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were going through a rough time or if something triggered that, but if you see it up close and personal,
I agree with you. What I usually, there's 2 types of people that happens to, but the most common one, it's they go in, whether they admit it or not, they're too open to the experience. They want the scare. They want the thrill. They want to see a ghost.
Of course.
Now, of course, I want to see a ghost, but they go in and they're very open. And usually, what happens is one of these ghosts tries to tell their story, whether it's whether it's a bad ghost or good ghost. Even good ghosts have really shitty stories, and they do that by basically dumping their emotional baggage on you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I teach in my, I call, it's not a class, but my little psychic protection miniature do thingy that I do, is when that happens, how to get rid of that very, very quickly. Because I don't like it. I like being told the story, but I don't want it at a deep level. I don't want to feel it.
And 2, I think a lot of times what happens, especially what I've seen during public events, when you have so many people with different experience levels, whether it's a person who's never investigated before, or a person, this is their 100th time being in a haunted location, is sometimes, because you don't know who's all walking in there, and when you get that many people in there, sometimes it can be, you don't know who that person is, and it could be their mental
state.
Oh,
Yeah, they're
absolutely.
yeah.
I tell people not to go on an investigation, even if it's just a light-hearted little public one. If you have so much as a head cold, if you have anything about you that is creating a weakness, whether it be mental or physical, I don't think, I can understand doing it because you already paid the $100, at some of these things. But, it's something I was always leery of. I've been very fortunate in that, of course, I never get sick. I'm the healthiest person I know. I'm a 52-year-old smoker, and people are dropping around me. So anyway, beyond that, I wanted to point out that I'm the guy that just marches in, la 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 la. When you point me to the dark room, now I'll notice things, like. If the room's dark, the dark entity you're talking about circling the room, I'm the idiot that would have been oblivious to it and walked right past the son of a bitch.
Yes, and I would have been. I tried actually finding it, and my eyes eventually adjusted, like our built-in night sight, and I saw it, and that's when I moved.
So, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, definitely... just going back to different locations at Farrar's, so the boiler room is definitely very dark, a lot of energy, a lot of activity, and then of course the principal's floor is what we call it, the fourth floor where he has his office, and you can't really miss his office. It's actually kind of an overhang over the steps on one side of the hallway, and it. We've had numerous times where, it's been known that he doesn't like people in his office. And you can, sit in his office. And we did this at the last public event. I had a group with me, and I said, just sit here. Just sit a while. And just watch down the hallway. And sure enough, you will see a shadow figure dart across the floor, the hall. There's a window on the other end that faces where the stairs coming up to the floor, and you can see it dart across from the light coming outside, and you can definitely back and forth, and it'll come closer and closer. And I think actually one time we had a piece of wood or something that happened.
We heard a really loud knock on one of the wooden desks that was in the auditorium.
Yeah, like a slam, like somebody just slamming their fist down. But he just definitely does. We assume it's the principal because every time, just about any investigator who's ever been there has kind of concluded that it's him and that it's protecting that office. His office is where he did a lot of his, the sexual things to the students. So,
and I just want to say that on the third floor, there's a little funny guy or girl up there that likes to pinch butts.
Yeah, that's happened. I've had that.
That's how you launched that episode, I believe.
It was during our interview, and I scared the crap out of JD, but it was worth it.
Yeah. I would say the third, fourth floor, it's all pretty active. A lot of footsteps, a lot of shadow figures.
Yeah, it's different. Everyone has a different experience, and I recommend checking it out. I know that if that school can terrify Corey Taylor of Slipknot, it can affect anybody.
Yeah.
Now, back to the web series and your travels as we close out the show. Of the locations you've been, what would you recommend to the listeners is a do not miss? If other than Farrar, of course, because I want people to come and see Elizabeth Fields, Cody, Chris Sutton, and myself at Farrar Schoolhouse. But other than Farrar,
I have two. Obviously, it's the Villisca Axe Murder House. That place won't let you down. And then a little hidden gem is in Crown Point, Indiana. It's called the Old Lake County Jail. It's where they filmed the movie Public Enemies, and that's where John Dillinger escaped from. It's a very, very active place, and it's very affordable. And now that they have the Dillinger Museum out back, it's really good for the history buffs as well.
Yeah. A lot of energy built up in that jail.
Now, boilerplate question to you as a pair or individually.
Okay.
The most scared you've ever been on a paranormal.
The most scared that I've ever been
Yeah.
was at the Villisca Axe Murder House. It's the only episode that I've ever had to leave a location 3 times to finish my job. We were in the kitchen staring into the piano room, like the living room, and I saw this little girl outside of the bedroom, and she moved next to the piano and through the wall. And we actually got a still of it on our camera before I saw this apparition, and immediately I teared up and I couldn't talk, and I had to leave the house. And Perry calmed me down, and I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I felt the house vibrating, and I had the full body chills, and I just basically attacked Perry on camera when I saw that. And it's amusing, but it's organic and genuine. It scared me, and I think about that place every day, and it calls me to come back, and I can't answer why because I don't know, but it definitely left some sort of imprint on my life, and I would recommend that anyone go there.
Yeah, I guess for me too, definitely the Villisca Axe Murder House it still stays with me every day. I don't think there's a day I don't think about at some point, in that night. I think about it every day. Just the things you experience there, the energy you feel there. I mean, you literally can feel the floor beneath your feet moving. And also for me, I guess I would have to say, probably our last one, which was the Melbourne Manor, which really, for investigative, it really wasn't all that. I mean, we got, again, like we had talked about earlier, about we later found more evidence on our cameras after we went back and edited than we did actually seeing it with our own eyes.
And it's only 30 minutes from Villisca as well, so
yeah,
if you're in the area.
But for me, it was very impactful because it's the first time I'd ever been, I would say, viciously attacked. I actually, 2 different occasions within about a half hour, I was attacked, I was scratched, and a total of 6 times on my back.
And it was hot, and
too hot to the touch, burning. I mean, it lasted, I would say, over an hour of just pure agony of just having the scratches all over my back, like somebody just came up and just started like clawing at me.
No scabs though. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, that was the first time. I mean, I've been scratched before, but it wasn't to that intensity.
No, it didn't scare me the first time.
Yeah,
the second time was hard for me to experience.
That was definitely, it was a very hard thing to deal with.
Well, gentlemen, we've ran out of showtime. I want to thank you for coming on. And incidentally, everybody, little disclaimer here, little correction. I called Elizabeth Saint Elizabeth Fields, as they pointed out in the chat room. Not that Elizabeth Fields is not a wonderful person who I would love to go ghost hunting with, but yes, Elizabeth Saint, Cody, Chris Sutton, and myself at the Ferrara Schoolhouse. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. I want to remind everybody, get to paranormalfiller.com/Ferrara, and we've still got tickets for sale for the event coming up next month. And good luck, boys, and everybody. Visit their website. Check out their web series. It is afterlifesessions.com.
Paranormal Filler.